Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. It is February, and we all know Valentine's Day is right around the corner. And I know that there are different responses to how people treat Valentine's Day. Regardless of where you stand with Valentine's Day, I want to invite you to think of it as a bell ringing moment, a moment to take stock of what's happening in your marriage, which today's guest, Michelle Purta, who I'm so excited to have on the show, would say is the most important relationship in your life outside of your relationship with yourself. So I hope you're preparing to enjoy Valentine's Day in whatever way feels good for you, but also it can be bigger than this moment where you feel like you have to perform romance in a way that doesn't feel authentic to you, but rather within these first couple weeks of February, what if you give yourself a little space to check in? Ask yourself, how's it going with my partner? Am I feeling connected? Are we making time for each other? What's great? What needs attention? Am I being the type of partner that I want to be? Am I feeling seen and supported? We all know that in the whirlwind of motherhood, that it is easy to lose track of ourselves and some of our most important relationships. And that's why I'm so glad Michelle is here specifically in February to help us remember and reclaim the loving and supportive marriage and partnership we want, both for us, for our partners, and our families, right in the messy middle of motherhood daily realities. Michelle is a mom of 3, a marriage coach, and host of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. An important lens of her work that I really enjoyed learning about is helping parents feel like they are a team again, as well as actually enjoy their marriage instead of just feeling like they are co-parenting or roommates. She shares beautiful guidance on how we can communicate better, resolve conflict better with our partners, and stay connected even in the busiest seasons of life. I trust you're going to have some incredible takeaways from this conversation, so let's get into it. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney.
My pleasure. I'm so glad you're here because you talk a lot about how it's common for married moms to get into ruts with their partners. And we were just talking real briefly before we pushed record about how we both had doctor's appointments and family logistics come up. I just feel like sometimes moms could use a little framework to recognize why this is so easy to let this happen. Can you start by speaking into that just a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, we've all been there, right? If you're married and you've got kids, you know how big of an adjustment you experience going from just dating, married, and then you decide to grow your family. And all of a sudden it was like, what happened? Right. But it's almost like you don't even have the energy and time to dedicate to figuring out what changed. You just got to keep chugging along, right? You've got to feed the baby. You've got to change the baby. You've got to navigate life with this person who's very, very dependent on you and can't fend for themselves at all. And all of a sudden you find yourself looking back years later, maybe if you're lucky months later, and you're like, what happened to our marriage? It feels like all we do is talk about logistics. All we do is talk about the kids, the house, work, maybe whatever it is. But we're not feeling like an us, right? We're feeling more like co-parents. We're feeling more like roommates, but we don't feel like a romantic couple. And sometimes if you get far enough along the line, I've had couples tell me, we don't even feel like friends anymore. I don't even know that I like my husband anymore because I carry so much resentment. And so this happens because we are so laser focused on supporting our kids, nurturing them, taking care of all the things that need to happen, which if we're going to go there, we're going to go there. females have been nurtured to be the caretaker, to notice. And also, our brains are kind of wired that way, right? If you go back to hunters and gatherers, we're the gatherers. So, what do? We're scanning for berries. And so, we have this innate strength and gift to us that we can juggle a lot of things. We've also been nurtured in a way where we are taught to be considerate of other people, think of other people first. Just the simple question of what do I make for dinner? I'm sure you're like, oh my gosh, that's like very stress inducing, right? You're like, okay, well, this person doesn't like this. This person's allergic to that. This person likes this texture. This is how much I need to make. It's like so many questions come to mind that you need to consider, and you feel that pressure, the mental, emotional load. And it's like, no wonder you don't feel like you have the bandwidth to dedicate to your spouse because life still needs to move along, right? Meanwhile, what did guys grow up focusing on? Achieving things, doing things, learning how to prioritize their future, security, finances. I'm not going to say all, but a lot of them. That's what their focus is on, right? That all plays into why marriages change once you have kids. It's because these conversations of how do we want to do life? What's working? What's not working? They're not happening. Instead, you're getting into arguments about specific issues instead of zooming out and talking about the bigger issues, the more like prevalent themes that are going on in your marriage because you're tired, because you don't have the capacity, and also because maybe you don't have the skills to do so, which is what is necessary for a healthy, happy, successful marriage.
Yeah, lots to dive into there. And I appreciate that backdrop because what's coming to mind is as you're speaking these truths is that women often feel unsupported and unappreciated for everything they're doing with their household and this kind of invisible emotional lift that many moms still carry disproportionately that I know we both speak a lot about. I like how you talk about the friction that happens when we don't communicate our support needs clearly. And I like that you say it's something that we can practice and improve upon because I feel like that's hopeful and empowering. So, can you teach us a little bit about some of the practices that have helped your clients shift their relationship with better communicating their needs?
Absolutely. I myself did not grow up learning these skills. Like these are very much things I had to go out and learn for myself. And I think that's majority of the population. And with the political climate right now, you can tell that communication is poor as a whole, right? There's just a lot of divisiveness. And I feel like that's echoed into how we operate in our homes as well. So maybe you feel resentment. And so the natural inclination is to get fiery about it. No one ever helps me. Why am I always the one doing these things? And da 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 da. And it comes off like a criticism, like a complaint. If you think about healthy communication, that's not the route to take. What we often focus on is how is this feeling to me? How is this affecting me? AKA victim mentality. Now, I'm not saying that you're not feeling these things, that it's not impacting you. What I'm saying is let's take it a step further and think about what is my end goal for this conversation and what are the best steps I can take, like the best strategy I can use to get that end goal. So let's think about it. So if you're saying, I'm starting to feel resentful, or I've been feeling resentful because I feel unsupported. I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the family and he is able to take care of himself, whereas I don't even know when the last time I did something for myself was because I'm carrying the responsibility of everything running smoothly. Then maybe you should think, okay, well, what do I want the end goal to be? I want the end goal to be to feel like I have a true partner in life where I feel like we're looking out for each other, where whatever needs to be done just gets done. Maybe there's specific ownership to certain tasks. Maybe it means kind of balancing it out. If one person is feeling down, right, whether they're really stressed out, sick, they have a huge project coming up, whatever, then another picks it up, vice versa, right? It kind of just is a dynamic shift in how things work according to what kind of season you're in your life. Okay, well, what is the best approach to that? Do you think that speaking in that way, reactively, in the moment, picking a fight, criticizing, is the best way to achieve that? Most would say no, right? I would hope.
Right, right.
Because what's that going to trigger? Defensiveness or a feeling of like they're not good enough, a failure, which has a lot of its own coping mechanisms that come out of that, right? Maybe they do even less because they're like, woe is me. If I'm not doing a good job anyway, everything I do is wrong. So why do anything? Or they overcompensate and it becomes this whole issue. Or they're like, well, you haven't done these things in a while. And they start, bringing out your shortcomings or whatever it is. And so that's not a healthy route to take. What I implore you to try is thinking about what it is that you're wanting. Don't think about what you're not getting. That's really easy. Acknowledge what it is that you're not liking. And then I want you to shift how you view it. Okay, well, if that's what I don't want, what do I want? When you ask yourself that question, so, okay, I want more partnership. Okay, talk about that. But talk about that in a way where your partner will want to stay engaged in the conversation. How do we do that? We have to do what actually Whitney beautifully showed me before she hit record, is she grounded herself. I don't know if she has told you about her process, but she took a few deep breaths before hitting record to like ground herself into this conversation. And that is a beautiful exercise to do anytime you feel like something is really triggering you when it comes to your marriage. Before going in hot, I want you to ground yourself. Give yourself some time to like sit with whatever it is that you're feeling, gain that clarity around what you're wanting, kind of like run through your head different ways that you can approach this conversation, but set it up for success, right? Don't just set it up for, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind and he's going to feel the pain that I'm feeling. Yes, that could feel justified, but does that meet your end goal of partnership? Probably not. So leaving with thinking about what you do want, you're grounded, you're ready to have the conversation. Your goal is partnership at the end of the day. You go up like, hey, I really want to talk about, how things have been working around the house lately. I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel a little bit frustrated and resentful about how things work. And I want to talk to you about what we can change so that it works better for everyone. When would be a good time to talk about this? Now, that piece is key. I always talk about consensual conversations. We never want to ambush our partner because we've been ruminating about this for, I don't know, hours, maybe days, maybe weeks. And we have our whole scripts set up, ready to go. We need to give them time to catch up with us. And so having a consensual conversation means asking for consent. If he's ready, he'll let you know. He's a full-grown adult. He'll tell you, okay, let's talk about it right now. Or maybe Friday after work, we can talk about this. Or maybe when the kids are at grandma and grandpa's, we can talk about this. That's a great framework just to start with, right? So just to reiterate.
Yeah.
That you're wanting and having a consensual conversation.
Let's pause there for just a minute. I just want to reflect that back because it's so interesting. Whenever I'm reading about somebody's work and I just try to apply things immediately. I've had a little bit of a topsy-turvy week with just my husband traveling and, shifting logistics. And I feel like I had this backlog of things that I needed to talk to him about. And I was like channeling Michelle yesterday, or no, this morning. But my husband was clearly getting his workday going. And I was like, is this a good time for 5 minutes just to touch base? And he was like, sure. But I feel like it was just a good reminder that sometimes we've got our mental ticker going, especially as moms. As much as we do our grounding practices, there's weeks where that's just what's happening. And it's easy to just want to, throw up whatever's happening when maybe our spouses are not in a place to be receptive. So I just really like your idea of that consensual conversation piece. And I also feel like it slows us down a little bit too, to make sure that we're kind of sitting down with that team framework and like what is a positive outcome I'm hoping for versus just kind of coming in hot, as I'm sure every mom has experienced from time to time.
Yeah, guilty for sure. I mean, before I started using these tools, I was I still am by nature reactive. I am an Aries, so I have some fire in me. But I had to truly learn to take in the power that is of pausing, right? That's not my natural instinct to pause and reflect and all that. It's like, I'm ready to go. I used to associate that with caring, actually. Like, I care a lot about this relationship and we need to fix this ASAP. But what I didn't realize until I started dating my now husband is that there is power to pausing and processing because you can gain a lot of clarity and reduce the regret that you feel from what comes out of your mouth when you haven't taken the time to really reflect on how is it that I'm feeling? What is it that upset me? Why did that upset me? What am I wanting instead? What was the part that I played that led us here, right? Like, what can I take accountability for?
Mhm.
All of those things can't happen if we jump right in and, like, okay, I'm ready to have the conversation. And
Yeah.
so we really do have to keep teamwork top of mind because unless you want to lose the conversation, you've got to imagine winning as a team sport. If you're crossing the finish line on your own, you're losing.
Yes, I'm glad you're making that point. And one of a nuanced piece of your work that I think is worth going into as we're talking about how women can just get more clear about feeling supported is kind of this idea that men aren't always mind readers and that instead of doing this global, like, I'm overwhelmed, I need help. I think that you do a really good job of helping us position things to give a specific example of what support would look like. And then you even go on to say, telling them why. So they understand why this feels like high stakes for us. And I want you to go into that, but I'll give an example from my own life just this week. Like I said, it's been a little wonky. And I asked my husband to take planning and going to the grocery store for one meal this week off of my list, just so it was just like, okay, this would be something really clear. I'm in a book writing process and I have a deadline this week. And I was like, because that would give me the headspace I need to spend a little bit more time on my book, which is something as a partner, I know he's expressed wanting to support me. I'm like, this is actually the how is taking something off of my mental load and my practical list. And he was super receptive to that. So I just wanted to let you know I appreciate how you explained that. And I was wondering if you could speak into that a little bit.
Absolutely. So we go about life knowing what things mean to us. We know ourselves really, really well. But the thing is that everyone else doesn't. Just like how, no matter how long you've been with your partner, you don't actually fully know him, right? You don't know his inner thoughts. You only know what he shows you, what you've observed, and what he's shared with you. But there's a whole lot of other things going on inside, and we cannot expect our partner, even if they've been with us for decades, to know exactly what's important to us, how we prioritize things, where they fall on the priority list, what it means to us, unless we share that, right? So, for example, a very common, very relatable thing is like when you're about to throw a party, a gathering, and you're like running around, decorating, and maybe you're doing food prep or sending out food that you've ordered. And then you're like, where is my husband? And you're like, why are you organizing the garage, the part that no one's gonna see? Found my husband. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, people are about to show up. I need you inside the house. And so, since that, since multiple iterations of that happened, I'm like, okay, we've gotta do something differently here. So now, whenever we have parties, I'm like, okay, we gotta do a little huddle. This is what I'm gonna be working on. What are you going to work on that will help this situation? And then, I'll let him chime in on what he thinks he needs to focus on. Then I'm like, okay, before you do that, I think what would be more urgent actually is making sure this gets done, whether it's like vacuuming the entryway or like making sure the tables and chairs are set up for people to be comfortable or bringing up the paper plates or whatever, so that the immediate needs of the guests are taken care of before whatever he thinks is important. Because I don't want to negate what he finds to be a priority, but I do want to introduce whatever is more urgent so that he understands, like, oh, you're right. I don't want people to be uncomfortable. So it's just like kind of coming together and thinking about, okay, what is important and what's urgent, and coming up with that list of things to do together as a couple, working as a team so that we can all feel settled. Because I don't want him to feel anxious either, right? But sometimes with the way we think about how we organize gatherings and get ready for them, it could be different. What I think of, he might not think of. And that's very apparent when we start renovating too. I'm like, that's not going to work functionally. So that's where it's like you have to put two heads together, and remember, two heads are better than one. And so I hope I explained what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think what's coming back, what it's all coming back is just remembering, instead of kind of approaching these conversations from a curious, compassionate, like,
Absolutely.
this is how it would feel really fun and generous for me to bring people into the home. And that would look like these things needing to get done. What would it look like for you? And then dividing and not saying this is how it's done. But actually, I think that this, just to bring it full circle with the pause, having these conversations before you get into sometimes cycles is very meaningful, because I feel like every married couple has their rubs of situations where it seems like, whether it's when you're having gatherings or some other situations, whether it's sweaty carpool nights where somebody's miscommunicating, whatever it is, I think just that pause and making sure you're talking about it openly during a non-harried time is important.
Absolutely. And I think that we need to remember that our marriage is going to have so many iterations of it throughout the lifetime of your relationship. So, in order for you to experience growth, you have to look at it as a evolution. So, how do you change? So, leaning on my former HR days, it's like continuous improvement, right? Like, what does that look like? Continuously assessing what's working, what's not working. Okay, let's repeat and continue with what's working, and what's not working, let's change something. It could be a little tweak, and that it's all it takes, or it could be a complete revamp of what things look like how the house functions and routines and stuff like that. But until you have those conversations, you're essentially signing up to repeat these annoyances and frustrations, and you've got to take accountability for that if you're not actually having these conversations. And I think what most people do is that they avoid them because it's uncomfortable. They feel uncomfortable with having these tougher, challenging conversations that aren't about like rah, rah, like good stuff. Let's celebrate, everything's all good. But that's what marriage is. It's work. Marriage takes work because you're taking two people with completely different upbringings together and trying to create your own. But what most people try and do is they try and force a merge instead of really coming up with something that's their own. So it's like a team again, like,
Right.
approaching it from a problem solving approach and not being afraid to have these tougher conversations. Because so here's another thing that I say a lot, which is like a huge piece of my work, is conflict is inevitable, but arguing is optional. And I don't think people know that. And what I mean by that is conflict is like disagreeing, right? We've all experienced that. And that's going to happen. No matter how much you think you're aligned with your partner, you're going to experience disagreements. But arguing is just one way of handling that. You can deal with conflict in a way where it just feels like a conversation, a mature conversation between two people who seemingly disagree, who are going to work together to figure out a solution together so they can both cross the finish line together. Arguing is, well, this is where I stand, and then this is where I stand, and we're going to see who is going to back down first. I'm going to try and convince you to come over on my side. And then same for the other person. And you're essentially having two different conversations or talking to a wall because no one's actually listening. This is where you have the cyclical pattern of like the yelling, the criticizing, the defensiveness, the blame, all things that don't lead to a productive conversation. That's why people aren't having these conversations because they don't have the skills yet to be able to keep conflict a conversation. It's escalating into arguments, which no one ever wants to be engaged in.
Right. Yeah, that's unproductive. I agree with you full heartedly there. What's something that might surprise us about the healthiest married with kids relationships you see?
Hmm. It's a great question. That they can still feel resentful at times. They can have regular conflict. But what the difference is what they do when they notice it. A lot of couples who aren't in a healthy marriage, when they notice resentment, they're just like, yeah, they kind of double down into it and they don't do anything about it. Or maybe what they do with it is not the healthiest. It doesn't help change the situation in any way. Or they don't have the skills and how to navigate through it and they kind of make it worse. And then with conflict, we just talked about that. They try and do what they do, and that's amazing that you're trying to do what you do, but then they don't realize when they come to a point where they're like, okay, we've hit our limit of what we know to do. Now is the time to get support to help us through this because we clearly don't have the skills for what we need in this situation to navigate through this going forward. And so the thing that most surprises people is it's not huge changes that you need to make. It's just awareness. It's awareness, it's having the tools, it's practicing it over and over and over again until your approach becomes second nature. So you choose that over what you used to do, which has led to a result that you don't want anymore.
I want to bring us back to kind of where we started, to this place where it's just common for maybe in some marriages, there's not so much, disruption or arguments as much as there's just a little bit of a fizzling just
Mhm.
because the labor of the family and everything, jobs, middle life has overshadowed your priority of connecting. We both talk about weaving micro practices and habits into days because I feel like that is actually accessible for the reality of moms who have sometimes fractured lives in terms of demands and everything that's coming at them. Talk to us about some of these micro moments that can help us stay emotionally in contact with our partners in just a quiet, intentional day to day way.
I love that you said micro because I call it micro connections. So if we back up, macro connections is what you would traditionally think you need to have a marriage that stays connected, which is the regular date nights, the vacations where it's just you two, right? But the micro connections are what bridge the macro connections together. The micro connections is what carries us through life as partners. That's what looks like where you lean into each other and you choose to reach for each other. So in the Gottman Institute, they call this bids for connection. So this could be walking by and just like grazing your hand across his shoulders or just checking in and like having one of those like slower moments where you're not just rushing through life trying to get stuff done, check off your list, get people where they need to be, get dinner on the table or whatever, but you're slowing down and you're actually looking at your partner and demonstrating that you actually care about where he's at right now, what his experiences are. So that could be a simple way is checking in on a regular basis. Hey, how you doing? Is there any way I could support you right now? If he looks stressed, right? For my husband today, that looked like making his breakfast for him because he was in a rush to go somewhere and the cats made a big mess that he cleaned up, which I'm grateful. I would much rather cook than clean up the mess. But that's a simple way for me to show, hey, I got your back, right? I'm here for you. Another way is making sure that you take the time to make time for each other, whether it's watching a show together, having those tougher conversations. Tough conversations are severely undervalued in a relationship. If you don't have those, that's going to affect your willingness and desire to connect. So you cannot try and like date your way out of feeling the frustration, resentment towards each other. You've got to sort that out in addition to adding in these moments of micro connections. This can also mean doing like a longer hug, not like a drive-by hug or drive-by kiss. You're just like very habitual, but like meaningfully. What I love to do with my husband is like a 20, 30-second hug. That might sound really long, but if you try it, you'll notice at first it feels like a normal hug. And then as time passes, you start noticing, you kind of start melting into each other. You become more present with each other and engaged in the moment. It's really amazing. Another micro connection you can have is when you guys are together, intentionally choose not to talk about logistics or kids. Talk about what you would have talked about before kids. What are your goals that you're working towards? What's something that you have been really interested in lately? How's that project at work going? How's that one coworker? How's your friend doing? When's the last time you hung out with your friends? Do you want to go organize a guys' night? Like truly caring about the livelihood of your partner. That is what connects you two. And the nice thing about connection is that it's the best hack for having better conversations.
Mm,
If you feel connected with your partner, you're not going to so easily go from 0 to 60 and demonize your partner anytime you guys are disagreeing. Instead, you're going to remember because it's fresh in your mind this is my partner.
mm.
I'm going to talk to him as my partner, which looks like more patience, more understanding, more curiosity, more compassion. And that's invaluable in a conversation. We all want to receive that from the other person.
Yeah. Oh, I love that list. My husband and I have a fairly strict rule that we can only talk about family logistics on the commute to our dates.
Okay.
So it's hilarious. Sometimes we'll take a cab for ease if there's not parking, and I'm like, man, this taxi driver thinks we're probably like the most boring. But I'll be like, okay, Tuesday, can you cover? And then we'll like get to the restaurant, and I'll be like, zip, okay, that's done. Let's
Love
enjoy
that.
our, the vibrant, full people we both are and talk about, what we're reading, how's life, and
Yeah.
it's been a very small rule that doesn't take any more time or energy, but it's just helps me protect that time.
Absolutely. I mean, those conversations are necessary to have, especially if you want partnership throughout the week, which is key, right?
Right.
You've got to talk about logistics, like who's going to take who where, who's going to handle what. This is my busy night. I'm probably going to do like leftovers that night or whatever. It would be a good help if you started dinner that night or just did dinner all together. Those conversations need to happen. So whether you have it on a Sunday, on a Saturday, or sprinkled throughout the day, or texting each other. Have those conversations, but also understand the importance of removing that from your conversations when you're trying to intentionally connect.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming to a close, but I guess just in this area of having healthy marriages right in the messy middle of motherhood, is there anything we didn't touch on that you feel like you reach your clients with and they're like, oh, I wish I would have known this earlier?
The biggest thing that I think they don't see coming in our work together is how important it is to take care of ourselves. If we don't do that, if we don't care for ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and that includes increasing our own self-awareness and self-mastery, like really like leading ourselves, not just like reacting to life, that's going to help us create the marriage that we want. If we can come into the marriage feeling like, I got myself, I feel whole, I know what it takes to be happy, I know what I need, I know what I want, and you're coming into the relationship as a whole individual, that helps ease the pressure off of your spouse to be like, I gotta make her happy. I gotta do this. I gotta do that, or else this is gonna fall apart. And then meanwhile, he's not taking care of himself and he's showing up to conversations and into your marriage reactive because he's not at 100. So I would say that's the thing that surprises my clients the most is that a lot of our work up front is how are you doing as an individual experiencing your marriage? They think, oh, everything we have to do is do it together. We have to talk about this together. We have to spend time together. Okay, yes, right? Because you can't repair a marriage without togetherness. But a lot of the work of marriage is also taking care of yourself. So if there were a hierarchy for marriage, sorry, caveat, healthy marriage, okay? So this does not apply to a toxic marriage where there's like abuse, okay? It would be you love yourself most, then your marriage, then the kids. And I know that sounds counterintuitive and it sounds counter biological, but if you take care of yourself, you're going to be a different version of you showing up into your marriage, showing up as a mom. On top of that, your relationship with your spouse is the most impactful relationship that you have on your life. So if you're happy in your marriage, you're going to have a little extra pep to your step. The way you parent is going to be vastly different than if you take care of yourself and you're unhappy in your marriage. They're going to feel it. They're going to feel the tension. They're going to feel the discord. They're going to feel the disconnect. And it's going to leak out into how you parent because I'm sure you know how you are after a fight, right? You're like wrecked. You're unavailable for any nonsense that the kids have for you. But if you're good with yourself and you're good in your marriage, it's like nothing can go wrong, right? Yeah, we'll have little stressful moments, but we got this. You feel resilient. So you must prioritize yourself. You must prioritize your marriage. Everything else, you'll be able to figure it out. It will fall in place.
I so agree with you there. It's interesting because all of my work is around helping women, specifically moms, self connect and lead lives that have intentional joy, where they remember themselves and their spark. And there's always this ripple effect and byproduct, which is not the primary focus of my work, but their relationships seem to feel lighter. It's like they have more capacity as a
Mm-hmm.
parent because they're like, la la la. Oh, I'm like content and happy, and I'm kind of on cloud nine in my own jam. Oh, so you did this annoying thing, but that's all right. I'm not going to like fight. And then you just almost see your relationships through a softer lens, is how
Yes,
I've witnessed it. And you're lit up about your own life, and that's much more compelling as a partner as well. I
absolutely. You're more attractive.
Right. And it just things flow differently when you pour into yourself. So I've witnessed it with my own clients, and I think you're spot on there. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. It's essential. I thought it was like, make sure everyone else is happy and then I can be happy. But it's like, wait a minute. What if I could just focus on myself, which is not selfish, by the way, right? Because that allows us to give more of ourselves to everyone else, right? So, like, if we're going to take the very like overused example of like pouring into your own cup first, like, imagine yourself giving from the overflow rather than emptying your cup to give to other people. How powerful would that be? Everyone can win in that situation. You don't need to self sacrifice for other people.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this was such a meaningful conversation. I always end with an opportunity for reflection for the women in my audience. So, in this area of investing in ourselves so that we can cultivate a strong marriage amidst motherhood, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
I think if you can get clear on what your vision is for your life, that
Mhm.
will help you know what the next steps are, like what to focus on. Future cast 20 years from now, 30 years from now, how do I want my life to be like? What's my relationship feel like? What's my relationship with my kids feel like? How do I want to feel as a woman, as a wife, as a mom, as a employee, business owner, whatever it is that your other roles are, and work your way backwards and be like, okay, well, in order for me to have that, I need to be that version of myself now. So, what do I need to do differently today? Even if it's like just doing a 1% change every single day, you're going to get there, right? The hardest part is giving yourself the time to think about, what is it that I want? And then just take the next step, and then take the next step, and then take the next step. And sooner or later, you're going to look back and you're like, wow, I have everything that I wanted.
Thank you, Michelle. I know that my community will want to follow you and learn more about your work. So, where's the best place to connect?
Yeah. So since you're listening to this podcast, it's very easy for you to just hop on over to my podcast. It's called Marriage and Motherhood. Other than that, you can find me on Instagram at Michelle Purta Coaching, and I'd love to connect with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.